Welcome to Philly Fortune Talks with your host, Jake Penny, where the city's brightest minds share the secrets behind their success. Are you ready to be inspired?
Prepare to dive into the high-paced world of New York City real estate with Brett Fischer, an executive with 14 years of experience navigating one of the most competitive markets in the world. In this episode, Brett shares his journey from breaking into the New York City real estate scene to establishing himself as a leader and innovator. Learn the strategies, insights, and challenges he's faced along the way and discover what it takes to thrive in a real estate industry of the Big Apple. Brett, it's a pleasure to have you on Philly Fortune Talks today.
Thanks so much, Jake. I love the Philly accent. It's fantastic, and I'm happy to be here. Ready to have a good time.
So you've been in New York City real estate for, over 14 years now. What drew
That's
you to
correct.
this industry and, how has your journey evolved over the years? I mean, you've experienced some of the best highs and the best lows in the real estate industry.
That is very true. So I started because I came from a sports broadcasting, TV, radio, journalism background when I went to school in Philly at Drexel. My dad's from Philly, so I thought I was going to be there the rest of my life. And I was like, you know what? I want to be in a big market. Was not going to happen on TV in a big market. So I'm like, you know what? Let's try New York City out for a couple of months and just see what's going on. I gave myself 3 months, went to a job fair in Herald Square. And it was a sales career fair, and real estate seemed like the least shady thing at the time. And then I checked it out, and yeah, definitely some crazy things have happened. The first year was the hardest I've ever worked in my entire life, including all of school, including now. I mean, really just, grinded and hustled as much as I possibly could. But yeah, I've been doing it. It's going to be 15 years in March, and I love what I do. I love New York City. It's an awesome time. And, I'm glad that I left that sports broadcasting scene to do this because I would never be able to do some of the things if I weren't in real estate.
And what did that transition look like from sports broadcasting to the real estate scene? Like what type of skills or experience maybe transferred to the real estate scene that was, useful to you, or which
Well,
ones weren't?
well, I will say you have to be able to be spontaneous. You have to be good with improv. When you're doing sports broadcasting, things come up. You have to know how to respond to it. When I was doing sideline
Mm.
reporting as well, they tell you a couple of minutes in advance, hey, this is what you're going to be talking about. Talking on the radio, interviewing different people. So you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Going to New York, it's totally different market from anywhere else in the country and the rest of the world. And for me, it was, I had no idea what I was doing. It wasn't even fake it till you make it. I literally couldn't even fake it. I was just like, everybody would tell me something different. And then somebody would say, no, that's illegal. You can't do that. And like, this is how you're supposed to do things. And someone's like, no, if you do that, you're not going to be in the business anymore. I literally had to fail so many times in order to figure out what could actually help me make enough money to survive in New York City. But, a lot of those interview skills, they came into play, being able to be under pressure, dealing with some of these clients, dealing with some of these situations, it really mattered a lot. And even a lot of the things I do now still come from that background. And on my social media, I still do a lot of interviews. I interview different restaurant owners, apartment owners, different entrepreneurs. And that all comes from my background in sports broadcasting, journalism, radio, TV, all that stuff.
Love that. So New York City, big ass market. What unique challenges or opportunities do New York City real estate market present compared to other markets, like for instance, where you used to live in Philadelphia, for instance?
So New York City is massive, but Manhattan itself is actually pretty small. There are a million people. So, I mean, there's just people everywhere.
Right.
Some buildings have 3,000 people. It's crazy.
Wow.
I mean, that's like a small city, or
Yeah.
So, but the thing with New York City is that it can be intimidating. It's very different from Philadelphia, just in the fact that the mentality and they're both amazing sports towns. So in New York, it's really the melting pot of the world. And this is one of the things I love about it a lot. You go, Queens, I believe, has the most amount of languages of any area in the entire world. And when you're living in New York City, you can go to any restaurant you want, you can go to any place, and you're always going to find something different. It's impossible, even within like a 1 mile radius. You can't go to every single bar, restaurant, lounge. Even if you went to a different one, like every couple a day, it's just impossible. But I forgot the main question. So,
Oh, what like challenges or opportunities does New
oh,
York
challenge.
City real estate present?
Well, what I'll say is co-ops can be really difficult. It's about 75 to 80% of the market here. And a lot of them, most of them have board applications and interviews. And sometimes it can be very, very, very difficult. In other parts of the country, and you can just have enough money, you can get a loan from a bank and you're good to go. That's it. Here, even if the bank gives you a loan and you have good credit, you still have to go through a very potentially grueling process with these board interviews, and you can get turned down for any various reasons, although most of the times it's due to financial. So I think that is one of the most difficult things, just dealing with co-ops, the interviews, everything else, but also some of the condos are still asking a lot of information, as opposed to houses, which you're going to see a lot less of here, where it's just, do you have the money? Do you have the loan? Great, fantastic. Lien search, title search, all that stuff. Boom, that's it. So the deals can take a lot longer, even if you're an all cash. I just closed an all cash buyer. Um, from contract to close, it took 7 months. And it's like,
Wow.
how is that even possible? Well, in certain new developments, it might be 2, 3 years. Or sometimes there's certain delays that come into play, something with the management, or there's just a lot of different variables that you have to think about when dealing with this market. I'm very used to it, but somebody just starting out, they might go crazy because they're not used to. We don't even have an MLS. I'm not a realtor. I've never been a realtor, and everybody calls me a realtor just because that's like the lingo. But I'm with the real estate board in New York. I've never been with the National Association of Realtors.
God, it's 7 months to close. That's a long time.
It's not typical, but it does happen
That
time.
that was
I've had
you.
I've had situations where it took 2.5 years because the new development was supposed to be ready and it kept getting delayed, 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 and then finally it closes. But you have a lot of new development here, similar to
Yeah.
Miami. Miami probably has more, but it's totally it can be kind of crazy the different types of properties that you're dealing with.
Right. Right. So how have you leveraged like leadership and innovation to stay competitive in like you just said, such a dynamic real estate market?
I think by failing a lot in my first year, and I mean a lot. It was intense. You really have to drop the ego and you have to stay emotionally balanced, emotionally stable because you're gonna have, as you said, the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, sometimes the same day, sometimes on the same call. You know? And if you get too extreme one way or another, you're going to go crazy. I know some people did a lot of business and they got burnt out because they didn't handle things the right way. Maybe they're not putting away money for taxes, or they got too excited and then they didn't work for a while, or they got too depressed when they had other deals that were going to happen.
Hmm.
It's and that's where the leadership comes in. You have to lead by example. And one of the things I do is if another broker reaches out to me, I get a decent amount of calls and direct messages on Instagram. People from my website, they'll reach out saying, "Hey, Brett, just a couple of questions." I'll talk to anybody, honestly, and see how I can help them out. If they're working for me, it's different. But if they're not working for me and they just have a couple of questions, I'm happy to answer them for them and see how I can best assist. But I think leading by example is important. I want to set a good example for everybody else. And when you have a good reputation in New York City, which can be so competitive, it really does make a huge difference. There are times where you're like, look, this broker might have a slightly better deal, but the other broker I've worked with a lot, they're really easy. And I know it's going to be a seamless transaction. That matters because what happens if the other broker, maybe they have a better deal, but then the deal falls through because they don't know what they're doing, or they're actually not as qualified as they say they are. They don't have the forms filled out properly. So you have to think about that. Your reputation matters. Even though New York City is huge, the market we work in, it's still a very, very small community of people who actually do business. I mean, the average person does about 2 sales a year, which, is not a lot. And even though the price points are a lot higher here, it's still, everybody can get into real estate. I think, the failure rate is something like 93%. So that means within 2 years, only 7 out of 100 people are still in real estate. Now, maybe they quit after the first day. Maybe they quit a couple days before the 2 years are up, or they just don't renew their license. But, people understand what brokers are good to work with and what brokers can be a lot more difficult. And so I take a lot of leadership classes. I always recommend people learning everything they can, not just about the market, but, taking classes on how to work with people, communicating with others. It sounds kind of cheesy sometimes, but you learn a lot just by practicing these things with others.
So, like, what advice would you give someone that is looking to break into New York City's real estate scene today?
So if
Because
it were, so if it were absolutely today, I guess, well, let's just pretend that they passed their test. They got their 75 hours and they passed today. One, make sure you have at absolute minimum. I mean, absolute minimum, 6 months of reserve, because there's a good chance that if you want to get into sales, not rentals, rentals will close faster. But if you want to get into sales, you might not see a dime for 6 months or significantly longer. Because one, you have to think about who's going to actually give you buyers if you have no experience. How are you going to get these buyers? Some people, they just have a great network to begin with, and it's really simple for them. But most people, it's a challenge. And so if you're going to start out with rentals because you have to make money, that's still not easy either. The rental platform keeps changing. So number one, make sure you have 6 months minimum. Two, get ready to fail a lot, but learn from those failures, because if you're just failing, you're not taking anything from it. That's true failure. If you're just not succeeding, but you're like, okay, well, how can I get better next time? How can I improve? And you keep getting a little bit better every single day. That's really where you're going to grow a lot. And drop the ego. You might be working on a $20 million listing because somebody needs you to show for a second and you think you're hot shit and you're the best ever, and then you don't get any money from it. Or maybe it closes and they're like, here's $5 because, here's for the subway ride or something like that. Those things happen. I mean, they happen all the time, especially when people are new, because it's like, what are you bringing to the table? And
yeah.
people have to understand this. You got to hustle. You got to learn as much as you can. See if you can find a mentor who's going to teach you things and either give you leads or at least put you on listings so you can get that experience. But that first year, that's what I was saying, was the hardest year I ever had. I learned so much by failing. And I just felt like I failed faster than others. So I did a lot more business in my first year and my second year than most of the people around me. But it was hard. I mean, it was very, very challenging. After my first year, I thought about quitting. Um, I sued my first two companies. I won both lawsuits. They weren't paying me. I had a lot of issues. And I'm like, this is how things are going to start in New York. This is crazy. So it was really difficult. And I didn't really know who else to talk to, because I didn't want to tell other brokers who just started, or real estate agents, hey, I'm struggling. Like, how do you get better? But all I did was I kept, showing people, advertising, trying to market myself, trying to, look at the inventory, take videos. And, eventually over time, things got a lot easier and a lot better. But I had to try out a lot of different avenues before that happened.
So trying different avenues out, that leads me to, my next question I wanted to ask you is that, the real estate market in New York City is known for its fluctuation. So you kind of got to be a chameleon to always adapting to the market changes. So what did that look like throughout your career? And do you see any other fluctuations coming up in the future?
It's a great question. And I think in the very beginning, it didn't matter because I was dealing mainly with rentals. And when the owners were paying the fee to the brokers, it was easy for me because it's like, look, work with me. I'll show you apartments. You have to pay me anything. I know all the inventory. And I was doing enough deals where the landlords were sometimes giving me listings in advance before they marketed it so I could get those rented too. But after I was getting into sales for a while, I realized, okay, interest rates changing, that matters. When the elections happen, that matters. Certain commercial laws, certain residential laws change. I mean, all these things, they really had a big impact. And initially, nothing really happens. And then after a couple months, you're like, okay, this is a serious thing. For example, going from 2.5% interest rates to 8%. That is a massive difference.
Oh
And it
yeah.
doesn't just affect the buyers, it affects the sellers too, because unless they have enough money in equity in their property to buy something all cash, are they really going to give up something where they're most likely paying under 3% to buy something else where they're going to be paying 7.5, 8.5%? It's just, the market stalled because of that. And where we were, even though Brooklyn was going pretty crazy, and I don't work in Westchester, New Jersey, even though I was licensed there at the time, but those areas were going nuts. Manhattan was really slowing down because people are like, hey, I need more space. I need outdoor space. I want to be able to walk around. I don't want to just be in a large building with a ton of people with COVID going on. And so you have to adapt. And so the question is, what can you do to get more business? And it's following with other people, getting to know other areas, seeing if people are open to other locations that maybe they weren't open to originally. And you have to just keep following up, texting, emailing, calling. Although for a while, legally, I couldn't even do that for 3 months. So it was definitely, there's been stressful times that you just have to say, look, don't go with the dinosaur method. Maybe something worked 5, 6 years ago, but it's not working now. Maybe it worked 5 months ago, but a new law kicked in or a new system's available, and you have to continuously update your program and your goals on what you want to do. But you can't just wait around for things to happen to you. Otherwise, you fall behind pretty easily.
Yeah, always being in a proactive state, not a reactive
Yeah,
state. Like, not letting life happen to you, you making life on your terms, pretty much.
absolutely.
So in a city as fast paced as New York, probably the fastest pacing city in the world, how do you build and maintain like strong relationships with your clients, being that, you know, there's a lot of competition in New York City? And
Right. So the number one thing I'll say is I just don't bullshit my clients. I don't tell people what they want to hear.
hmm,
I tell them the reality of the situation. So, and this happens a lot. People will be like, well, these 6 brokers I talked to said the same thing. You're the only one who said something different. I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm not going to lie to you just to make you happier. And then a lot of them leave, and honestly, a decent amount come back. And once they do, and they realize they went through their crap, I was the only person telling the truth, they're loyal to me because they're like, all right, this guy was loyal and he wasn't, just trying to get my business because saying whatever he wants to say. It's a lot easier to work with somebody. But I do lose a lot of people that maybe if I lied a little bit, I could get them to work with me. It's just not my style. I work with a lot of
oh,
clients. One, it's not how I was raised. Two, I don't want to have to worry about what I lied about. And three, it's like I want people to understand what's the reality of the situation. Sometimes, but by the way, there's tons of really, really great real estate brokers here in New York City, but there could be a few bad apples and it ruins it for everybody. So if those people are telling lies and saying things that aren't the case, and customer has a bad situation or a bad experience because of that, it's like they just assume that all brokers are the same. For me, I try and do everything I can to make sure that, hey, we have a good reputation, and I want people to understand that I am looking out for their best interest. But that's the biggest thing. It's really just, you know, not lying to my clients. Yes, I do create a ton of videos. Yes, I know the market really well. I do a lot of business and I get a lot of referrals and I have a website that I want to work with and all these different things. But all these things help a lot. But I think the biggest thing is just being transparent. You need to have good
yeah.
communication with your clients and transparency. I really stress that a lot. And those two things alone, I feel like really help me get to where I need to be, as opposed to having a website, having social media, but I just tell people whatever they want to hear.
Yeah, I feel like, in they see through all the riffraff, right? If you don't have integrity, transparency, and honesty, right? That eventually will catch up to you, right? That'll tarnish your career eventually.
Yeah.
So it's better to just I've always been a straight shooter myself. Like, it's like it's always like, oh, like you look great in that dress. No, you don't. Like, just
Well, I'm not going to go that far, but I give you credit, Jake, because
it was just theoretically speaking, like
yeah,
the
yeah.
context. Not, of course,
I
you're not gonna
don't
tell.
I
Oh,
don't I don't want to wear makeup. I don't need like an eye to the face or something.
yeah.
But I appreciate your integrity there.
So, what's the most valuable lessons you've learned, like about like client service and satisfaction in the real estate landscape in New York City?
So I think it goes back to, is this a job or is it a business? And I think you really have to treat it as both. Some people, they treat it as a job, meaning, hey, let me get the deal done for right now. They're not thinking long term. They're like, hey, I need to pay my rent, need to pay my mortgage, or whatever the case is. And so they'll go out of their way, even if it's not best in the long run. Then people are like, hey, you gave me bad advice, or I didn't have the best experience. They don't want to use you again. So that's the first thing of it. Treat it like a business in the fact that, hey, you know what? This property I don't think is the best for you. And I understand I get a really good commission from this, but I don't think it makes sense for these particular reasons. They get something, maybe it's not as expensive, or maybe they don't get anything at all. But down the line, they're going to refer me business. They're going to eventually buy, sell. So you really have to treat this like a long-term business. If you don't, you're going to miss out on a lot of money in the later years. And with that, you still got to treat it like a job. You got to make X amount of calls. You got to make X amount of follow-ups, the texts, the emails. You got to really treat this like school a little bit in terms of, your inventory, how to speak with different people, understanding different cultures have different negotiation tactics, reading books and
Yeah.
educating yourself, because these things they'll come up whether you want to believe it or not. So the biggest thing, yeah, treating it like a business and a job. I think that more than anything else, really. All the other things, look, yes, you have a good follow-up, yes, have good communication, but when people have the structure and they understand what that structure is, that's really how you're gonna be able to get to the next levels. But I see all the time, they write everything down and I'm like, this is great stuff, and then they don't follow it. So it's like, well, that's just half the battle. You have to act, you have to take action, as you're saying. You can't just wait for things to come to you. So literally, one piece of advice, that's really it. Treat it like a job and a business as opposed to one or the other. You got to do both.
What
And
trend?
learn from your failures, but I already talked about that.
Yeah, definitely. That's super important. Everybody, you're going to fail in life, whether it's in life, business, whatever it is. But as long as you learn from it, you keep up and keep going forward and don't take that as like a definitive answer. It's like school, like, back
Yeah.
in school, like if you failed, oh, that's terrible. They never actually told you why you failed or like helped you know, get the A or something like that. It was always just like, oh no, you failed. Well, it's like, all right, well, way to tarnish that kid's mindset. You
Yeah.
know, it's like you fail in business, you get up and you keep going until you make it happen.
Yep.
So what trends do you foresee shaping the future of real estate in New York City over the next few years as, new laws are coming out or different construction or rental laws, things of that nature?
Well, one thing I will point out, because the trends, they're only trends when they first happen. And then you look back and you're like, that was just a slight fad. It
Yeah.
wasn't really like it happened for a couple weeks in there. What I will say is that you're seeing a lot more, commercial properties being converted into residential, which is somewhat rare. Now you're seeing that a lot in financial district, which is known for converting these gorgeous commercial buildings, sometimes banks, offices, into whether they're residential condos or just rental buildings in general. But now you're seeing it elsewhere too because of what started with COVID. So I think that you're going to see that a lot more in the upcoming years, and you're starting to see it right now as it is. It can take 3, 4, or even more years to do the full conversion, but there are already projects going on. I think that's going to really continue a lot. So instead of seeing some of these offices completely vacant, or a large percentage of it.
Yeah, I find that really fascinating. Something I've always wanted to get involved in is like the conversion of a warehouse or office space into residential. Um, obviously that's bigger in like cities and whatnot. Just never took that leap yet, but I find it so cool. You take it a nice old industrial building and like make into like a co-op living residential space, and just the
Yeah,
build architecture is really, really neat.
it is. And I mean, yeah, the architecture, especially when they keep the exterior legally, a lot of times they
Yeah.
have to, but when they keep that exterior, it's cool. They have these gorgeous elevators. You're like, you just wouldn't see at any modern building. I love that. It's really special.
Right. And like like the brick on the inside, the elevators, the steel
Yeah.
beams and everything. And it's kind of like it still has that like rough look. Like it's a warehouse, but it's like elegant. You know,
Yeah.
they give
Yeah.
they
Those
give like a
lofts are pretty
pizzazz
cool.
to it.
Yeah.
How do you plan to like continue leading and innovating in this ever-changing market?
So, I've been doing more social media. So I do different things, but I finally found a system that I enjoy creating. And it's where I'm educating people on what's going on, some of these restaurants, different entrepreneurs, things about New York City. Because New York City real estate is very unique in the fact that the real estate isn't just about the real estate itself. It's about everything surrounding it. It's about the commercial. It's about you know, the restaurants, the museums, the arts, the parks, all these things going on at once. And so because of that, I think, when you find your favorite bar or your favorite restaurant or you're next to a Whole Foods, as studies have shown an increased value when you're near certain places, it changes the dynamic of how you're thinking about, where you want to live. And so with that, I've been doing a lot of these social media videos and it's different for me, but I enjoy it a lot. I think that's something I'm going to continue to like do some more, add a lot more real estate stuff to it. But I think that's where I'm kind of, you know, showing that, and not necessarily leadership all the time, but just showing the unique way to learn about New York City and, kind of invite people to some of these areas that maybe they're not as familiar with. But from
Now,
a
I think
leadership standpoint, I always, like I said, always trying to set a good example. I always want to help people out as much as I can, and I'm going to continue doing that.
that's awesome. You know, as a side note, I think I might have like the numbers wrong, but I saw like this meme or quote, whatever you want to call it. It would take if you went to a restaurant in New York City, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it would take you like 400 some years to get through every single
Honestly,
restaurant in the
honestly,
city.
I it's probably longer than that because by the
Okay.
time like all those years going by, you have 1,000 new places, and
True.
it's just
Okay. Okay.
um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, literally, like with as I was saying earlier, within a half mile radius, I couldn't. There's so many places. I mean, like it's insane. It's absolutely crazy. And
Yep.
sometimes you have 15 different places all attached to one building. So you go out, there's another one. You go out, I mean, they're all connected.
Right.
It's insane. I would be curious to know if somebody could actually do the science behind that statistic to see a number because it is fascinating. But I mean, for New York City, it's got to be more than that, more than 400 years because New York
I'll
City
have
is
to
just
look it up again
massive.
because it
I know
was like
I've seen different things too, but I'm like, I really want to know because I've talked about that with friends a lot,
okay.
and it's just hard to quantify like what that
Right.
is. So,
I mean, if you could probably quantify it as long as there was no new restaurants being added from like a given date, right? Um, but I'd just be so curious because honestly, like I've been going to New York City since a little kid. You know, my parents would always take me around, you know, the holidays and stuff like that for all the lights and whatnot. And I always envisioned, you know, myself, oh, I'll go to every single restaurant when I grow older in New York City. And then, like, as I grew older and social media became a thing, I seen the meme of like, oh, it would take you like 473 years. I'm like, well, that dream's dead.
you'd be surprised how often people go to the same four places all the time.
Yeah,
Like you have your spot, you have your place you go with the girls or the guys, and you get coffee at the same two places, you get breakfast it's like once you have that routine, could you go to other places? Yeah, but it's like that comfortability, right?
yeah, yeah. You know, if you know before like COVID happened and everything like that, me and my significant other, we would just plan like weekend trips to go to New York City. Like, oh, this weekend we're going to go to all the rooftop bars, all like the ones that hit the top charts. This
Yeah.
weekend we're going to go to all the brick oven pizza places. We're going to eat at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And just load up on brick oven pizza. You know, and we just had like themes when we would go to New York City. That way we could experience more of it. But you know, at the end of the day, there's so much to experience. It'll take a lifetime and some to be able to experience everything.
Well, I will say that with my friend, we went to Carnegie Deli when it was still around. We went to Katz's Deli, Second Ave Deli, and Ben's all in the same day. That
Right.
was now, I mean, I don't like taking food home. It's just a thing. Like I have a big
Right.
appetite. I don't, but yeah, we had to yeah, I did take some food home because I could not. It was like the entire day. I felt so sick. I was like all this pastrami, but it's something I wanted to do, and I'm glad I could do it before Carnegie Deli went out of business and then they stopped. Um, but yeah, it's sometimes you like want to go, "Hey, let's have a pizza day, or let's have a pastrami day, or let's have a donut, something. It just makes
Yeah.
it an adventure, you know?
Yeah, it's
So
definitely cool because it's like it's almost like your own map, and you're on a quest of
yeah,
experiencing
yeah.
all these different things, and it's fun. And it for somebody that's a tourist in New York City that just goes and does the same thing all the time. Oh, they go here, they go there, they see all this stuff that's the New York City attraction. It's like it's nice to like put your own spin off on
Keep me out of Times Square. That's all I ask.
it.
It's the worst place on earth. I was always like, oh, this is the greatest place ever, and then I lived here for like I don't know a month and a half. I'm like, oh my god, like how did it change such a short amount of time? I thought it'd be at least a year or something before that, but oh my god, just thinking about
So
it.
as we wrap this up, Brett, many self-employed individuals and entrepreneurs like ourselves are thinking about, their future incomes. Um, do you have any thoughts of creating passive income through real estate or, replacing your income through investments or other opportunities for yourself, your future family, whatever that may be in the big city?
Yeah, so I've had a lot of Airbnbs in the past. The big thing about some of these laws that take place in New York City is you can make a lot more money and be stressed out like a mofo, And it's like, do you want to deal with all that? And a lot of people think they do, they don't. But there's a lot of great investments and things that maybe don't cost as much. For example, are you thinking about a higher cap rate, or are you thinking about something that's probably going to increase in value a lot in the upcoming years? Because there's different types of investors. So if somebody's like, hey, can I do an Airbnb in New York? I'm like, I mean, you could, but a lot of it's illegal what people do. You can do a month, but then you still have to pay all these fees and all these fines if you don't have the right thing. So, people are looking to invest. I'm like, look, find a building that has low monthlies that can rent out easily, and you can hang on to it. You're paying all cash, and you get a lot more money versus something where you're just kind of saying, oh, this is a cool building and I don't really know anything behind it. Or I want to do an Airbnb. And yes, initially you're making significantly more until you realize all like the fees that come in. So, from an investment standpoint, if you're specifically looking here, there's really like 5 or 6 different types of investments that you're thinking about. Are you looking at a building? Are you looking at an individual apartment? Are you looking at a collection of apartments? Or are you just looking to rent apartments out? And there's different avenues. So, but the cool thing is, there's a reason why so many people want to be here in New York City, because it's a place where yes, you can invest in, but you can also live here while you're thinking about what you want to do. So.
Right. Well, awesome, Brett. It was a pleasure having you on Philly Fortune Talks today. For listeners that want to get in contact with New York City's broker and learn more about what you have to offer and what you do for your clients, what's the best place for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can go to my Instagram here. I'll kind of move out of the way. So you can go to my Instagram, which is the New York City Broker. Or you can email me at Brett at thenewyorkcitybroker.com. Everything spelled out just like it is here. And yeah, I'm very, very responsive. Sometimes I don't respond right away because I do get a decent amount of people emailing me or sending me DMs. I have to go in my others and see who else is contacting me. But I will say, anybody who has like a question about New York City real estate, regardless, I would say reach out to probably around 99% of them if they contact me. So it takes a while, but I really do everything I can to, get back to the community. And for people who are interested in, real estate or in general, just have general questions, I really want to help them out any way I can. So
Awesome, Brett. Well, it was a pleasure having you on Philly Fortune Talks
thank
today.
you. I really appreciate it and had a great time, Jake. And yeah, you
Perfect.
did an amazing job. So I
Thank
feel
you.
honored to have been here today.
Thanks for tuning in to Philly Fortune Talks with Jake Penny. Inspired to share your success story? Visit phillyfortunetalks.com/guest and let's inspire together.